So, how does a country or a company or a cadre of humans manage to keep up with the rate of innovation? Can they keep up? If so, how? As we peer into this future, we must look back to be able to find the answers. As we enter this new technology renaissance, we must take lessons, in my opinion, from the very father of innovation itself, from one of the original masters of the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci.
Welcome to the Inside Forbes Councils podcast. Each episode shares transformative insights and advice from members of Forbes Councils, a group of invitation-only communities for successful executives and entrepreneurs. This is Inside Forbes Councils.
Hi everyone, this is Stephen Ganoza. Welcome to Inside Forbes Councils. Today we have a very interesting segment from Forbes Technology Council member Dr. Jose Morey. Dr. Jose Morey is the Chief Medical Innovation Officer at Liberty BioSecurity, a multidisciplinary research team that transforms life science discoveries into groundbreaking solutions for health and industry. This includes studying organisms that can survive in extreme environments such as outer space and use those findings to create new treatments. Much of the work that Dr. Morey does is quite innovative, and he acknowledges that innovation can cause rapid change in our society. In order to be ready for and adapt to that change, Dr. Morey says we should look towards great innovators and Renaissance men such as Leonardo da Vinci.
Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Jose Morey. I am the Chief Medical Innovation Officer for Liberty BioSecurity, where I help lead medical innovation across the enterprise. Previously, I was Associate Chief Health Officer for IBM Watson Health, where I helped develop new artificial intelligence technologies across the Watson Health initiatives. I've also held advisory positions for several accelerators, such as MIT's Solve and Ideas Accelerator, as well as NASA iTech, which is helping develop the future technologies that will allow us to reach and to colonize deep space. I also am faculty at the University of Virginia and Eastern Virginia Medical School and lead artificial intelligence and human augmentation at Singularity University. Today, I'd like to talk to you about innovation. I'd first like to start speaking to you about a book by Thomas Friedman called Thank You for Being Late that helps set up the discussion about how difficult it is to be innovative in today's age. In Thank You for Being Late, Mr. Friedman argues that even though humans are very adaptable creatures, we've been able to evolve to the pinnacle of the food chain. We have been yet unable to adequately adjust to the rate of exponential change that is currently going on around us. This exponential change has been brought about by the speed of technology innovation. Mr. Friedman argues that if you apply Moore's law, the law that states that the power of microchips should double approximately every 2 years, to automobiles instead of microprocessors, then the modern day counterpart to a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle would cost us 4 cents, only utilize a single tank of gas over the course of that owner's lifespan, and be able to approximately travel 300,000 miles per hour. But yet, this is only the beginning. Mr. Friedman goes on to argue that things are only getting much, much faster. Even though we are in the midst of this Big Bang level explosion when it comes to the integration of the Internet of Things, IoT, we are still only seeing the tip of the iceberg. Yes, over 10 billion devices are interconnected, and that only accounts for about 1% of the total potential. But if anyone went to the recent Consumer Electronics Show, CES, you saw that smart homes and interconnectivity of things is going to be gangbusters in the near future and in the foreseeable future. The real explosion that we're going to start to see in this rate of exponential change and interconnectivity is when we start connecting things such as organics or biomechatronics, when they start making their light into everyday connectivity. We are starting to see what that may look like with implantables or advanced wearables. Humanity is struggling to keep up with the rate of exponential change at all levels. Individuals, governments, corporations, they're all playing catch up with the latest lingo, whether it be blockchain or xenobots. High-functioning professionals, such as physicians, are struggling with burnout at a never-before-seen rate. Municipalities are struggling with autonomous vehicles, ride-hailing applications, and self-charging scooters. Corporations from all walks of life are struggling with AI and big data, and the fear that at any moment they may be Amazoned. So, how does a country or a company or a cadre of humans manage to keep up with the rate of innovation? Can they keep up? If so, how? As we peer into this future, we must look back to be able to find the answers. As we enter this new technology renaissance, we must take lessons, in my opinion, from the very father of innovation itself, from one of the original masters of the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci. After centuries, much has been written about this master, but much can still be learned. Leonardo lived in a time not so different from our own, a time of great change, technologically, artistically, politically. Today we discuss the likes of Jobs, Musk, and Bezos. In his day, it was Leonardo, Columbus, and Gutenberg. Leonardo was born a child out of wedlock to a well-known notary. His mother, Caterina, was a farm maiden. His father, hometown of Vinci, just outside of Florence. During those days, it would have been customary for the eldest son to follow his father's footsteps. But thankfully for humanity, the circumstances of life did not create Leonardo the Notary. For it was the very fact that Leonardo was born out of wedlock that allowed him to pursue a journey that should be modeled today in order for us to be innovative, to keep up with the rate of exponential change. Leonardo would have fit in ideally today. He could have been considered as the father of the gig economy. If I were to randomly ask 100 people what was Leonardo's profession, the vast majority would likely say artist. But if they were to ask Leonardo himself, his answer would likely be very different. You see, that was one of the strengths that we can learn from Leonardo that can be applied to this new technology renaissance. Be flexible. Don't be defined by just one thing. Leonardo, yes, was an artist to be sure, but he was equal parts engineer, mechanic, anatomist, botanist, geologist, architect, and the list goes on and on. If you were to ask Leonardo to build a column, you would be guaranteed that he would view that venture from an engineering perspective, and he would be able to build a pillar that was up to code and able to withstand the load that it was intended to. But he would at the same time view it as a beautiful piece of art that could stand the test of time as something to behold and likely be placed in one of our modern-day museums of masterworks. In fact, we actually have a record of Leonardo's resume in which he discusses his skill set. In a letter to the governor of Milan, he writes a 10-paragraph letter discussing these skills. He goes into detail about all the civic and architectural and engineering and military prowess that he would be beneficial for a municipal position. For the first 9 paragraphs of this resume, he discusses it in depth, how he can build bridges, waterways, cannons, armored vehicles, and public buildings. And it wasn't until the very final paragraph in which he states, quote, likewise, in painting, I can do everything possible, end quote. You see, Leonardo was the first living example of the benefits of STEAM. And what do I mean by STEAM? Science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. This is the second point that we can learn from the master on how to be able to keep up with the rate of innovation today. You can see this in so much of his work. Quintessentially there, on the page of his journal, circa 1495, For one of his thousands of journal pages that we have, in that same parchment, we can see an early sketch depiction of the famed Last Supper. And at the same time, you can find sketches of geometrical studies of how to square a circle, and then a passage of mirror script writing, which Leonardo developed to be able to protect his inventions. We can also see in his iconic symbol of steam, the Vitruvian Man, in which we find a perfectly proportional man inside a circle, inside a square. Time and time again, you can find examples of how his study of science begat better art, and how his study of art begat better science. You can see it in his study of anatomy of the face, how the cheekbones are structured, or how the muscles of mastication hug the osseous structures, just juxtapositioned by the master's most memorable smile in that masterpiece that we now know as the Mona Lisa. Or how his study of the anatomy of the torso, magnificently portrayed in St. Jerome in the Wilderness. His study of optics is brazenly brought to light in the Last Supper, in what would later be coined as Renaissance linear perspective, in which all the lines that are created throughout that portrait drive the viewer to look towards the center. There in the center where the Christ sits amongst his disciples in that famed final dinner before the betrayal at the Garden of Gethsemane. But you can see the symbiosis of art and science throughout any of the thousands of pages of Leonardo's journals, whether it's his depiction of architecture or of birds or eddies in a stream. All are perfect pieces of their particular science and at the same time perfect pieces of art. It is this symbiosis which we see alive and thriving today, whether it be the iPhone or the Hyperloop. Art begets science, and science begets art. STEAM. It was Steve Jobs himself that would famously show on a slide two intersecting streets, one labeled engineering, the other labeled art. He would signal to that intersection where the two streets met and say, that point there, that is where innovation occurs. The integration of STEAM has been the foundation of many other great innovators, not just Leonardo da Vinci, not just Steve Jobs. Ada Lovelace herself, the famed daughter of a poet and a mathematician, she is credited with creating some of the original computational algorithms considered the beginning of computer programming. Albert Einstein, another famed polymath, who we all knew about his famous contributions to physics, but he often said that when he faced consternation with a difficult mathematical problem, he would turn to playing the violin to help him think. This is not surprising, as the study of art is known to improve critical thinking amongst many mental and physical health benefits. Oftentimes, when I get consulted to build a group to overcome a challenge for a client, I include and at times restructure the team dynamics to make sure that an artist is part of the group to help bring a vastly different perspective to the problem-solving process, regardless of what that industry is. Oftentimes, I get asked to come help, obviously, with technology innovation. So I'm dealing with many mathematicians, scientists, engineers, technologists, but often they don't have anyone with an extensive background in the arts. And this is often integral to be able to be innovative. That combination of arts and science driving the core of innovation. Another skill in which Leonardo practiced that can be applied to the new machine age was lifelong learning. Long gone are the days in which an expert can rest on their laurels, both professionally and academically. One must continue to learn in all fields to help strengthen their core skills and to develop new ones. I like to call it being a jack of all trades and a master as needed. One has to be able to speak at a basic level on all sciences today, regardless of the field, and be prepared to deep dive when an expert is needed. This is because so many sciences are now overlapping. It is no longer an innovation in one's own field or industry that will come in and displace a business. It is often the innovations going on in fields that have traditionally been in their blind spots. It hasn't been improvements in combustion that has shaken the car industry. It's been electric motors. It hasn't been a new taxi company that has threatened commuter transport industry. It has been software, mobile devices, and microprocessors through applications such as Lyft and Uber. It hasn't been lower income clinicians that have upended healthcare, but neural networks and machine learning through AI applications. Another attribute that kept Leonardo at the cutting edge of innovation, the fourth lesson that we can learn, his insatiable curiosity. If we remember his non-conventional beginnings, this allowed Leonardo to not have to have structured learning. That would have been required as a legitimate eldest son. But due to his circumstance, this allowed him to delve into any and all fields of study. This type of study allowed one science to beget another science. I often get asked if I believe my medical background is helpful or a hindrance in technology innovation, and if the work I do in aerospace or artificial intelligence affects my practice of medicine. My answer is, it all augments each other. My critical thinking that I've honed through meticulous medical training allows me to quickly diagnose what ails a particular client or situation. My study of physics helps me understand the benefits and limitations of medical technology, and now my study of computer science and data management helps me understand the best implementation of AI in healthcare and other industries. From Leonardo's life, we see this depicted over and over, as his study of optics affected his architecture, or his study of birds in flight affected his engineering. This insatiable curiosity caused him to always ask questions and to seek out those whom he felt knew more than himself. This teaches us another lesson in the age of innovation, and that to learn, we must first be honest about our limitations. Regardless of what status or success we might have, in life, many of us stop learning after a certain age or level of success. In psychology, this paradox is known as transitioning from being a learner to being a knower. This phenomenon actually affects the highest achievers amongst us the most. The better we were as learners in our younger years, the more this paradox affects us when we become considered experts, quote unquote, by our peers or even ourselves. This causes a negative reinforcement cycle via self-presentational bias, where we wish to remain an expert, but we're paralyzed from learning and asking questions due to the fear of being thought an imposter. The other rate-limiting step tends to be the spotlight effect, the fear that others are constantly watching your every move to analyze your mistakes. Leonardo never left the learning stage. He was known as someone who constantly sought out knowledge from all around him. He was never afraid to ask questions, to learn more about what he called, quote, the infinite works of nature, end quote. From his journals, Leonardo can be seen as an active learner, constantly seeking out others to augment his knowledge. He would write about needing to find a master of arithmetic to help him find out how to square a triangle. He penned that he needed to find and speak with Jose Facio, who at that time was a professor of law and medicine in Pavia, to ask about proportions. He sought out the Benedictine monk, Friar Friar, to have him discuss the medieval text De Ponderibus, which was a collection of treatises ascribed to many greats, including Euclid, Archimedes, and Blasius of Parma. And on the same journal page, he noted, Leonardo, that he needed to see Giovanni the Bombardier because he wanted to understand how to better build walls. But the greatest lesson of all on innovation that we can learn from the master is that ultimately, despite all our successes, despite everything we have learned, that ultimately we are all still human. This view of Leonardo was not always the case. One of his early biographers, the 16th century artist Giorgio Vasari, famously stated, quote, sometimes, in supernatural fashion, a single person is marvelously endowed by heaven with beauty, grace, and talent, in such abundance that his every act is divine, and everything he does clearly comes from God, rather from human art, end quote. we as humans, we often tend to deify those who seem to achieve where others have failed. But Leonardo was anything but divinely inspired. For all of his success, he was prone to not finishing tasks. He often would go off on tangents, which is why he has fewer finished works among some of his other contemporaries. And if we go back and recall that resume that I mentioned that he sent over to the magistrate of Milan when he was applying for that municipal position, most of the things he stated, those accomplishments, it was mere propaganda. Leonardo was fallible. But it is this fallibility that can give all of us hope. Because it shows us that the skills that made him great are the skills that we mere mortals can train. Skills of insatiable curiosity, thirst for knowledge, willingness to ask questions, lifelong learning, and diversification of study are all things that we can instill in our lives, in our schools, and in our curricula, to better acclimate to the rate of exponential change that is occurring all around us. You see, Leonardo's time was a time very similar to ours. This is why we have much that we can learn from the master. His ability to combine art, science, technology, the humanities, and imagination remain an enduring recipe for creativity. Above all, it was Leonardo's relentless curiosity and experimentation outside of his comfort zone, which we should all strive to instill both in ourselves and in our children. Not just receive knowledge, but a willingness to question it. We need to open ourselves to seeing the world through various lenses and not to just cone down on a single mode of thought. We need to strive to observe the world like the master observed the world. The way sunlight bounces off a tree. The way someone gestures as they express feeling. The way an instrument may feel in our hand. We need to be willing to sit with someone new every week and be willing to learn from them. Speak with someone from different backgrounds, different experiences, different expertise. Learn about what is it that they do and how is it that they do it better than we do. All of these are the seeds of innovation. If we are to maintain an edge in today's world, in today's industries, in technology and enterprise, we must regain our sense of wonder, be imaginative, and like talented rebels of any era, we must think differently. Thank you very much. If you'd like to follow me or hear more about innovation and technology, please visit my website at www.drjosemorey.com. That's DrJosemorey.com. You can also contact me via the website or via my Twitter or LinkedIn. Twitter handle is at drmorey1. That's DrMorey1. I'd be happy to speak more and be happy to do any events and speak at any conferences that you may have. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
If you'd like more content on innovation,
So as change accelerates, leaders can no longer be on top of everything. We need to focus first on getting the best outcome from the organization above being right.
If you're going to be a champion for change, look for success stories in industries or companies facing similar challenges and learn from their mistakes. Talk to people from other industries. Don't be shy to ask them to share how they handle similar problems.
If you haven't already, check out episode 40 on fostering innovation in the workplace, where we were joined by Alex Goryachev, Ron Cogburn, Masha Sharma, and Maureen Metcalf. Well, that's all we have for today. As always, thank you for listening.
This has been Inside Forbes Councils. Please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're a member of the Forbes Councils and would like to participate in our podcast series, please email your member concierge. If you're interested in joining a Forbes Council, learn more at ForbesCouncils.com.